version 4. So IP version 4 is a 32-bit addressing system, which is very essential and very important. Every network device should have a unique IP address within the network. So in the last session, we have learned about the MAC address, the 48-bit MAC address, which is in the hexadecimal notation. We also seen the commands, how we can verify the MAC address of a device. If it is a Windows computer, we use the commands get MAC is one of the option which will provide us the MAC address of the device, or we can also use the command ipconfig/all. This will also give us the MAC address of the device. But along with the MAC address, every host in the network which is supposed to send or receive data must have a unique IP address, and this IP address is going to be divided into 4 octets, and in each octet there will be 8 bits. So there will be 4 octets, each octet will have 8 bits, and in each octet the minimum value will be 0, because all the 8-bit values are 0, the output will be 0, and all the bit values are 1, the value will be 255. So just look at, if these are the 8 bits in one octet, these are the 8 bits in one octet, so the value will be 0 only. But if the value of these bits is 1, the value is 1, for all the 8 bits the value is 1, there are 8 bits and all the 8-bit values is 1, then this value will be 255. So you may be wondering, how did we get this value 255? Because this is a binary number system, the first bit value is 2 to the power of 0, the second bit value is 2 to the power of 1, the third bit value is 2 to the power of 2, the next bit value is 2 to the power of 3, and so on, and the last bit value is 2 to the power of 7. So if you multiply these values, 2 to the power of 7 into 1, 2 to the power of 6 into 1, and 2 to the power of 5 into 1, and so on up to 2 to the power of 0 into 1, when we add all these values we get 255. And in the first option, anything multiplied by 0 will be 0. So in one octet the minimum value is 0, the maximum value is 255. And this IP version 4 is divided or categorized into 5 different classes. They are divided into 5 different classes, IP version 4. And this classification was based on a priority bit. We are going to discuss about what these classes are and how this priority bit will classify. So these are the 5 classes, and among these 5 classes, the first 3, that is class A, class B and class C, these range of IP addresses are the only ones which we can use in our networks for local area network and wide area network communication, or in other ways to understand, for accessing internet and also for within the organization communication, which we call intranet. For internet and intranet communication also we use only the class A, B and C addresses. Then what happens to the class D and class E? What are they used for? So class D is reserved for multicast communication. So multicast is a separate type of data communication which we will be discussing shortly what it means. And then the class E are a set of IPs reserved for research and development. They are no longer available for use in the networks. In fact, both class D and class E addresses cannot be assigned to the computers. Only class A, class B and class C addresses can be utilized. So how do we segment these IP addresses into different classes? So we have mentioned that in IP version 4 there are 32 bits, and these 32 bits are divided into 4 octets. So we are going to consider the very first octet. So there are 4 octets. The first octet has 8 bits, and among those 8 bits, the ones which have higher value, we call them as MSB, most significant bit. So these most significant bits are reserved for each class, and based on this reservation we will get the range for these classes. So let's look at the priority bit values for these 5 different classes. So this is the range that we just mentioned. The minimum value for every octet is 0. You can see here, when all the bits are 0, the value is 0, and when all the 8-bit values are 1, it is 255. So by substituting this value 0 in all the 4 octets and this value 255 in all the 4 octets, we get the total range of IPv4 addresses. So the starting IP address will be 0.0.0.0, starts here and then goes on up to the last address, which is 255.255.255.255. This is the starting address and this is the ending address, and in between these we have these 5 different classes, and these 5 classes are derived from the priority bit, and the priority bits for each class are mentioned here. For class A, the only one bit is reserved and the value is 0. For class B, the priority bit value is 1 and 0, and for class C it is 1 1 and 0, and for class D it's 111 and for class E it is 4 ones. So by keeping these values reserved, we get the range for each class. So let's go about understanding, by reserving these bits, how do we get the range for each of the classes. So class A range is obtained by having the priority bit value set to 0, and this will be the most significant bit from the 4 octets. You can see this, among these 8 bits, the first bit value is set to 0. This is what we call by priority bit. The rest of the bits we are not concerned, because we are not reserving any bits in these 3 octets. Only in the first octet we reserve the bits. So by keeping the first bit value as 0 and the remaining bits when we change, you can observe that the starting address is always 0 and the ending address for class A is 127. So starting address is 0 and the ending address for class A is 127. So this happens to be the range of IP addresses for class A. So we have seen the total range is from 0.0.0.0 and ends with 255.255.255.255. But for class A, because we have set the priority bit value to 0, by keeping that one bit as 0 throughout, we get the range from 0 to 127. So this is the class A range of IP addresses, and we will be discussing how this will be allocated to the users, organizations and computers. The IP addresses are meant to be assigned to the network devices. So hence we have used this same formula we have to use for the other 4 classes. So when we obtain this range, then we can look at how these are allocated, hierarchy of how the IP addresses are allocated and used. Okay. So let's go to class B now. So in class B, we have 2 priority bits reserved, that is 1 and 0. So out of the 8 bits in the first octet, you can see 2 bits values have been reserved as 1 0, and then the rest of the 6 bits are available for use. So the value starts from 128, as the numbers 0 to 127 has been used up by class A. So class B IP addresses starts from 128 and goes on up to 191. This is the range of IP addresses for class B. So we have got the class B range using the same logic, same formula. We have class C, and this class C, the priority bit values are 3 bits and they are 1 1 and 0. Hence the priority bit, when we substitute in this, we get the values from 192 and then goes on till 223. This is the range for class C. So you can see the priority bits 110 are reserved, and the range of class C is from 192 up to 223. Just a quick reminder, we have discussed about class A, B and C as the only addresses that we use in our networks today, whereas class D and class E are reserved and cannot be used. So the priority bit for class D is 1110, and by substituting this value in the first 4 bits of the octet, the value starts from 224 and ends with 239. This is the range for class D, and remember, this is reserved for multicast purposes. It is reserved for multicast purposes. We will be discussing what multicast refers to. And the last class, the first 4 bit values are set to 1, and the value starts from 240 and goes on till 255, which happens to be the very last address. So this is the total range of IPv4 addresses divided into 5 classes, starting from 0.0.0.0 and ending with 255.255.255. So how did we get this hierarchy? It is based on the priority bits. So it's based on the priority bits. We were able to classify these IP addresses. And then let's quickly also look at how the IP addresses are managed. How the IP addresses are managed. So these IPs are managed by an organization called IANA, and it stands for Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. This is the organization, global organization, which allocates the IP addresses to the global users. But under this IANA, or you can also visit the website www.iana.org to get more details about how these IPs are allocated and the different classes, etc. Under this global body, there are 5 sub bodies called RIR, which stands for Regional Internet Registry. Regional Internet Registry. This is the global sub bodies. There are 5 across the globe. According to the regions, they are divided. So under the IANA, we have 5 regional internet registries, and then they are region based. Like, say, for example, Asia Pacific, we have an organization called APNIC. For North America, we have an organization called ARIN. For South America, we have LACNIC. For total African continent, we have AFRINIC. And we have RIPE for Europe, Russia and Middle East. So the IANA has divided into 5 regions. For each continent is not exactly the continent, but a kind of region. So for Asia, the Australia, New Zealand, all these come under the Asia Pacific region, and the ISPs in these regions have to approach the registry called APNIC, which is called as RIR, and they allocate the IP addresses. So the hierarchy is first IANA, so global body to manage both IPv4 and IPv6 addresses. Under these IANA, we have the next category called Regional Internet Registries. There are 5 such registries in this category, depending upon the region they belong to. And under this RIRs, we have ISPs, Internet Service Providers. So we have the next category called ISP, Internet Service Provider. Internet Service Provider. Internet Service Provider. Under that ISP category, we have the end users. It could be like broadband users like you and me, or it could be organizations like companies, government offices, even companies like Google, Cisco, Microsoft. All these are also organizations which take internet bandwidth from the ISPs. Not just bandwidth, basically this allocation of IP addresses. And these IP addresses are so important, but without an IP address you will not be able to send or receive data. And these IP addresses are further categorized into 2 types called public IP addresses and private IP addresses. The purpose of the public IP addresses is to access internet, and when ISP allocates IP address to us, it will be a public IP address, and as a prerequisite to access internet, one must have a public IP addresses. but not necessarily all organizations will want to connect to internet all the time, or maybe there are certain groups of users who should not be accessing internet at all, or maybe there are some computer labs we have in college and school and university where they are meant to only communicate within the organization, within the library or within the laboratory. So we have a certain set of IP addresses reserved for this internal use, and they are called as private IP addresses. These private IP addresses are not usable or not routable on internet. So to access internet, one must have only public IP addresses, and for accessing within the organization, within the LAN, and we use private IP addresses. And private IP addresses are free. Anybody can use these private IP addresses. You have n number of computers, we can use private IP addresses without any permission or license, whereas public IP addresses are only allocated with the help of ISP. Okay, so let's now look at what we have is the octet format. These are the three classes that we mentioned. They are only usable in our networks. Class D is reserved for multicast, and class E is reserved for research and development. So in this 4 octets for class A, only the first octet is reserved for the network portion, N represents network portion, and the 3 octets are meant for the host portion. We will discuss about what this network and host represents. And similarly, the class B represents 2 octets are network bits and 2 octets are host bits. And in class C, we have 3 network octets and only 1 host octet. So N represents the network portion, H represents the host portion. So N represents the network to which this computer belongs to, and H represents the individual IP address of these local computers. Let's suppose we have a network of 100 computers. These 100 computers will have a unique IP address for each of them, which is represented from the host portion. But to give one identity for this whole network, we represent it by a network address, also called network ID. So we're going to look at how to identify the whole network with one IP address called network ID or network address, and the individual addresses are called as host addresses or valid IP addresses. Within the network, every computer will have a valid unique IP address, and all the network will be represented by one single IP addresses called network ID. So there is a simple formula to understand how to identify this network address and the valid IP address. Also, there is a very special address called broadcast address. If one computer wants to send a message to all the other computers at one single time, then we call that as a broadcast. We call that as a broadcast. So this is a special address reserved in the network. So there are 2 special addresses reserved in the network called network ID and the broadcast ID. These are also called as network address and broadcast address. Apart from these 2, all other IP addresses are valid IP addresses, and we can use it in our networks. So let's look at how to identify this network and broadcast address and valid IP address. So we have the first one as network address. This is also called as network ID. So in an IP address format, which we have just seen, if the bits, all the bits are value set to 0 in the host portion, remember there is n.h.h.h for class A. So the first statement, which is representing the network address, all bits are set to value 0, and it is called as host portion. In the host portion, if the value is set to 0, such type of addresses are called as network addresses. And then the IP address, when all the bits values are set to 1 in the host portion, so when the values are set to 0, it is called as network address. When all the bit values are set to 1 in the host portion, it is called as broadcast address. So network address and broadcast address are the 2 unique IP addresses, and these 2 addresses cannot be assigned to the hosts. We cannot assign these IP addresses to the host. Only a valid IP can be assigned to the host. So remember, network address is always the very first address in the group, very first IP address in the group, either it is class A or class B or class C, the network ID is always the first IP address, whereas the broadcast IP address is the last IP address. So the valid IP addresses are the ones which are in between the network address, which is the first address, and the broadcast address, which is the last address. So between the first address and the last address we have valid IP addresses, and only valid IP address can be assigned to the local computers, to the servers, to the printers, to the smartphones, to the tablets. All these network devices have an IP, and that is called as valid IP address, and that is the one which is very important, that allows us to communicate from the local network to the remote network, or from the source and destination. So it's important to know that there are two versions of IP address, that is IP version 4 and IP version 6. IP version 4 was the earliest one to be developed in the 1980, and it consists of 32 bits divided into 4 octets, and they are classified into 5 different classes. Among these, class A, class B and class C are important, because only these classes are the ones which we use for local LAN communication and wide area network communication, or in short for internet and intranet purposes. And class D addresses are reserved purely for multicast purposes, and the last one, which is class E, is reserved for research and development. So let's now look at what we mean by the broadcast. So before we discuss about broadcast, we have to discuss about the 3 different types of data communication. 3 types of data communication. These are the 3 different types of data communication, that is unicast, two multicast, and 3 broadcast. So what is the difference between these 3? So unicast is the one which is generating data communication from one computer to another computer. This is called as unicast. And multicast is the data sent by one computer to a group of computers. Unicast is computer communication from one computer to another computer, or from between the source and the destination, or between the client and the server. Or you open a browser on a computer and type zoomgroup.com. So you are generating a request on the local PC, and the request is going to that server. So this is a unicast communication, communication from one computer to another computer, or communication from one computer to the server, or communication from one computer to the printer. These are all the examples of unicast communication. In short, we call data communication from one source computer to one destination computer is called unicast. And the multicast is data communication from one computer to a group of computers. There's a difference between all computers and a group of computers. For example, just to understand this multicast, we have radio, right? And the radio, there are different channels. So you tune to the frequency, you get that program from that particular channel. So similarly, multicast is you are sending data on one particular multicast IP address. Members in the network who belong to that particular multicast group only will receive. This is called as multicast communication. And then we have the last method of communication, that is broadcast. And this broadcast is message sent to everybody in the network, to everybody, all the computers in the network. That's why it is reserved. So unicast is a specific data communication between 2 computers. Multicast is communication from one computer to a group of computers in the network, not all of them, very specific group. And then broadcast is from one computer to all the computers in the network. This is called as broadcast. So these are 3 different types of communication. And for multicast, we have a set of IPs under the class D category reserved. So to our computer, we cannot assign these addresses, not available. Class D addresses are not available for computers to use. Also in the class A, B and C, some IP addresses are reserved. Though we have got the scope and range for each class, if you look at class A, starts from 0.0.0.0 and ends with 127.255.255.255. But among these, the very first address which is 0.0.0.0 and the very last address which is 127 are reserved. We cannot use them. So from 0 to 127, 0 and 127 are reserved. So the effective usage of class A addresses is from 1.0.0.0 and ends with 126.255.255.255. 0 has been set aside and reserved, cannot be used, whereas 127 is reserved for loopback purpose. Basically to check on your computer, does it have the TCP/IP protocol or not. If it has a TCP/IP protocol, then it would respond that there is a reply coming for the loopback IP address. So let's check whether this computer has the protocol or not. So if you check on this computer, I am using the command ping space 127.0.0.1. So this is the IP address that we have set aside, and then we have got a reply from the same IP address 127.0.0.1. We are trying to communicate with that particular IP address and we are getting response from that particular IP address. So this is the loopback IP address. Not only this particular IP address, any IP address in this series will provide the same response, because this is a loopback IP address, and loopback IP address is only to check whether there is communication within the local operating system. So all these IPs are reserved only for the loopback test. And then let us look at how to assign the IP addresses, reserved IP addresses. The reserved IP addresses are in class A. In class A we have zero dot zero dot zero dot zero, the whole group, and in class A 127.0.0.0. So these two addresses are reserved and cannot be used. And as such, we also discussed about class D and class E. These are the reserved addresses and we cannot use these addresses. Okay. So along with these IP addresses, we also have something called as subnet mask. So what is this subnet mask? Every IP address will have a subnet mask associated with it. The subnet mask is the one which differentiates between the network bits and the host bits of an IP address. Okay. So later on we will be discussing about this in detail along with the IPv6 addresses in the next session. So in this session we will conclude by discussing about the functions of the network layer, routed protocols, routing protocols, and the IP address and subnet mask with respect to IP version 4. In the next session we will discuss about IPv6 and other functions of the network layer protocol. Thank you for watching this.
Good afternoon everyone, welcome to today's session. So we are continuing with the second pillar of oral communication, which is grammar. Yesterday I spoke about the various parts of speech. I gave you examples on noun. So today we're going to talk about pronoun and adjective, adverb, and so on and so forth. In the later part of the session we're going to have the call lines open. So if you're watching this either on YouTube live or Mana TV live, please dial the number. You will see the number little later. So you can call and ask your questions, anything in terms of pronunciation or grammar for English communication. So let's begin. We are talking about pronoun. Like I said, pronoun is a substitute for noun. You can't be using noun again and again. So that's why we have pronouns, which substitutes the noun. So it's a part of speech which is used in a place of noun or noun phrase to avoid repetition. Examples of pronouns: I, you, we, they, he, she, it, me, us, them, him, her, this, those. So sentence as an example, Mohan is tired, he wants to sleep, but I want him to finish the assignment. So instead of using the Mohan name again, for example, if I say Mohan is tired, Mohan wants to sleep, but I want Mohan to finish the assignment, instead of using the name again twice, I can use pronouns, which is he wants to sleep, but I want him to finish the assignment. So when we talk about pronouns, like I said, it replaces the noun or noun phrase, but there is also an aspect of singular and plural. For example, if I'm talking about one person, I can just say him or he or she, but or him or her, he or she, or it. Now, in case if the count is plural, more than one, then it multiplies. So I can't be using him, I can't be using he, she, I'm supposed to use they or them. So let's look at some quick tests to understand how to use it. The first question, Hari's mom asked Dash to clean the garage. So Hari's mom asked he to clean the garage or him. So obviously the correct answer is him. Hari's mom asked him to clean the garage. It's not garage, it's garage. A student at an all-boys high school should be on Dash best behavior. Now here there is an element of subject-verb agreement. The student, here it says a student, right? Now a student is singular. So a student in all boys high school. So the all boys high school, the entire school has only boys, but the subject here is one student. So a student at an all boys high school should be on his best behavior. So it's there. THERE is also there. THEIR is also there. Let me quickly clarify this. A lot of people do not understand and they interchange this. Okay. So there, THEIR is a possession noun. There is a preposition. So please do not get confused here. Both are pronounced the same way. For example, let me zoom this. Please keep the book there. Okay. So there is basically a particular place. So that's why it's a preposition. Now when I say there is THEIR, that's a possession noun. The group will arrive at 8 p.m. and they will make their arrangement. Whose arrangement? Their arrangement. So THEIR is a possession noun, THERE is a preposition. So don't get confused there. So a student at an all boys high school should be on his best behavior. Neither Mary nor Dash knew why the store was closed. Now whenever you have neither Mary, it should be nor I. Now here is an important element which you need to understand. In case if I am talking about more than one person, that includes me as well. So I as a first person. So here is an example. So if I am talking about 2-3 people or even 2 people, and that includes me in the list, we always make a mistake. We put ourselves in first, or we use ourselves first person as I. For example, Harsha, Subhash and me went for shopping. Now that sentence is incorrect grammatically. Let me show you why it is incorrect. This is how people usually speak, right? Now, there is a fundamental grammatical mistake here. So basically, I'm talking about three people here: Harsha, Subhash, and me. That is the first person. So Harsha, Subhash, and me went for shopping. Now imagine if these two gentlemen are not in the list. Can I say me went for shopping? No, that's incorrect. Another way of making a mistake where people usually use this: me, Harsha, and Subhash went for shopping. Now, here again, if I remove these two gentlemen, it still becomes me went for shopping, which means this is incorrect. So what am I supposed to do? The correct form is I went for shopping. Now, whenever you are talking about one person, that is yourself, first person, I went for shopping is fine. But in case if I am adding another person, even one or two, so it becomes Subhash and I went for shopping, or I can add more number of people: Harsha, Subhash, and I went for shopping. So whenever you're talking about yourself in a group and you have to specifically mention the persons as well as yourself, you will always, or the first person will always be in the end. Okay? So here, neither Mary nor I knew why the store was closed. I can't say me knew why the store was closed. No, the correct form is I knew why the store was closed. That's why I is the correct option here. Next, after the training, you and dash must discuss a few things. Again, same situation. After the training, you and I must discuss a few things. Alright. Now, moving on to adjective. Now, every noun, when it gets qualified, when I'm adding a quality or a type to a noun, that is basically adjective as a part of speech. So, an adjective describes, modifies, or gives more information about a noun or pronoun as well, because pronoun is a substitute for noun. Examples: big, happy, green, young, fun, crazy, tree, all these are adjective. For example, the little girl had a pink hat. Now the girl is noun. So let me take this example. Okay. I hope you can see that's blue. Okay. So the blue is nothing but your noun. The little girl had a pink hat. Now if I remove this, the girl had a hat. But what kind of hat? Pink hat. What kind of girl? The little girl. So anything that is adding quality, that is describing or modifying the noun or pronoun, is adjective. Now there are different types of adjective which you need to know. Something that adds quality, for example, dangerous chemicals, green vegetables, a square box. Quantity as well. So not just quality but also quantity. He has eaten 3 apples. I don't have much money. This long, thin centipede has many legs. So long, thin is also an adjective here. Demonstrative, something that is displaying or demonstrating. This red balloon is mine and those 3 yellow ones are yours. This cute baby is his brother. That cute baby is his sister. So anything that is denoting something is also an adjective. Now adjective in terms of singular and plural also you need to know. For example, my will become our, your will remain same, his, her, its. Remember I spoke about the possessions. So that's a possessive noun. for adjective. Now here are some more examples to quickly test your knowledge. I dash a new bike yesterday. Please make a note of this question. Think and tell me what is the correct answer. I bought a new bike yesterday. So the correct answer is A. If you don't hurry up now, you dash late for school. Question number 2. If you don't hurry up now, you dash late for school. You have been, you are, you will be. Okay, the correct answer is C, you will be. If you don't hurry up now, you will be late for school. Number 3, I would spend my holidays in London if I dash enough money. I would spend my holiday in London if I had. Now, if you already have, then you will be in London. Had because you actually don't have. If I had enough money. Number 4, they dash water sports. They are not, they like not, they do not like water sports. The correct answer is C, they do not like water sports. I dash for shopping tomorrow. I will be going for shopping tomorrow. I will go for shopping tomorrow. I went for shopping tomorrow. Now, this is a matter of tense. Here, went is past tense. So, went is past tense of go. Now, tomorrow is future. So, I can't use C. A is a continuous form. I need not use that. So, B is a definite form. I will go for shopping tomorrow. Ram and his team, that's number 6. Ram and his team dash recently won a tournament. To answer this question correctly, you need to understand something called, now let me quickly explain this to you. I'm not sure how many of you have heard this particular term. Subject-verb agreement. Now, what do we mean by subject-verb agreement? Let me quickly demonstrate that to you. I'm going to switch over to another aspect, which is subject-verb agreement. Let me see if I have created some kind of okay, here we go. So we are talking about subject-verb agreement. This is because the subject should always be in sync with verb. What I mean by this? If the subject is singular, I need to use a singular verb. If the subject is plural, I need to use a plural verb. Now, as simple as it sounds, we always make a mistake. So the reason I put the Superman symbol, in case if you have he, she, it, or any of singular form of verb, the singular form of subject, you will use a singular form of verb. What do I mean by this? See here, the players and the umpire is or are tired. Okay, the second sentence is the players or the umpire is or are tired. So what do we need to do here? Now, when I'm using and, I'm combining two singular forms. That becomes plural. So I will use the plural form of verb. Now, how do I identify what is singular form of verb and plural form of word? Let me quickly demonstrate that to you. So if you want to use a singular verb, add S at the end of the verb. Okay. Example: plays, works, sings. Now, in case if I have to use the plural form, now when I have to use a plural form, if I have to use plural form, drop the S at the end of the verb, which means if I have to talk about the same examples, I will remove the S at the end of the verb. So remember it that way. If it's a singular verb, add S. If it's plural verb, drop the S. So in case if your subject is singular, use S at the end of the verb. If the subject is plural, drop the S at the end of the verb. Okay. Let me show you some examples to help you understand this better. I'm going to use all singular verbs here. He plays cricket. She sings very well. It rains every evening. So if you pay attention to the verbs here, action, I am adding an S at the end of it because my subject is singular. Now if I have to use a plural subject, they play cricket. They, or for example, she is singing very well. Now that my subject is plural, I just say they are singing very well because are is a plural form of is. It rains every day. Now there cannot be a situation in terms of a climate for plurality, so we'll leave it at that. Okay. So when you have a situation like this where you are bound to get confused, the players and umpire is tired or are tired? It should be are tired. That's because when I'm using and, I'm combining these two. Even if it's player and umpire, I'm combining. But in the second case, this is where you will get confused. The players or the umpire is tired or are tired. Here you will use is tired because this is an or situation. So if it is or, after the or, the subject, the closest subject is umpire, which is singular form. And if I have a singular subject, I will use singular verb. Okay. So when we look at some more questions, you will be able to identify more such situation. Now when you see a question, you will be able to identify what should be the correct answer. Alright. So let's move on. Let's look at this question again. Number 6. Ram and his team dash recently won a tournament. Now this is a trick question because Ram is part of the team and team is a collective form. It just won. Ram and his team have recently won? No. Ram and his team has, because it's a singular form. The subject is singular, so I'll use has. Number 7, please make a note of this question. They dash put in all the hard work for the success of the team. They dash put in all the hard work for the success of the team. Now they is a plural form. Now if I have a plural form, I will use plural verb. What is the rule? Drop the S. So I have this particular verb which doesn't have an S. So I will use they have put in all the hard work for the team. Number 8, I think we dash the training session next quarter. Now next quarter means it's in the future. I think we dash the next session, the training session next quarter. I think we begin, no, we will begin the training session next quarter. We are beginning, no, that's not the right form. We are going to begin, that is again a incorrect form because it's a transliteration. So we will begin the training session next quarter. Tomorrow we dash at 2 p.m. Tomorrow we will meet, we meet, we are going to meet, we are meeting. So number 9, this is very easy. So look at the question and think what is the correct answer. Tomorrow we will meet at 2 p.m. So A. Could you please dash me some money? Could you please borrow me or lend me? Borrow means take from me. Lend means give me. So could you please lend me some money? Number 11. I don't mind dash if you are tired. I don't mind to drive. I don't mind driving. I don't mind to be driving. I don't mind drive. So number 11, look at it, think and answer. I don't mind driving if you are tired. So option B. They arrived dash we were having dinner. They arrived while we were having dinner, when we were having dinner, during we were having dinner, for we were having dinner. So number 12, think what is the correct answer, and meanwhile you will see the number flash on your screen, 040-2354-0326, or the toll-free number 1-800-425-4039. If you have any questions about the portions that's been completed so far, which is pronunciation and a little aspects of grammar, if you have any questions, please call and ask your question. I will provide you the answer. Alright, so let's continue with number 12. They arrived while we were having dinner. So A is the correct answer. Number 13, they have sold dash car which they won in a lottery. They have sold dash car which they won in a lottery. T-H-E-R-E there, T-H-E-I-R there. This is fairly easy. I just spoke about difference between preposition and possession noun or pronoun. But here it's a trick question. The correct answer is C. In this case, they have won the car in the lottery. So denotively speaking, C is the correct answer. They have sold the car which they won in a lottery. Number 14, I dash worked for this company since 1998. I worked, I am working, I work, I have worked. Now to answer this question, we need to understand something fundamental. Now let me explain. This is one mistake where a lot of us get confused or make a mistake. From versus since. Okay, this is a preposition in terms of time. If I'm using from, I should be using from when I have specifics on when did it start and when did it end. Okay, I will use since, when the stated time continues. What do I mean by this? Let me show you an example. I lived in Bangalore from 2004 till 2006, which means it has ended. So I can use the word from. If I have to continue in the same way, I am living in Hyderabad since 10 years, which means I am still living there, which means the time is still continuing. Okay? So question number 14, when you look at it, I dash for this company since 1998, which means I am still working there. So the correct answer is B. I am working for this company since 98. Number 15, she dashed me to help her develop an IT training program. She has asked, she have asked. Can I use have? I just spoke about subject verb agreement, right? I can't use have because she is a singular form. She has asked me to help her to develop an IT training program. So option A. So verb types, verb is action. It signals an action, an occurrence, or a state of being, whether mental, physical, or mechanical. Verb always expresses activity, right? Anything in terms of action. Verbs in English have 4 basic parts. Now pay attention. The base form, the ing form, which is a continuous form, the past tense form, the past participle. Now something that you need to remember, we have studied all this in our school, right? We went through basic grammar in our school days, but we don't really remember the rules, but we only remember the usage. Look at it this way. There is something that has already happened, which is past. There is something which is present, a perfect present or continuous form. For example, I am talking, which means it's going on right now. Or I will talk tomorrow, that's a future tense. I spoke yesterday, and that is past tense. Any action that we are talking about, that action has to be relative to a time. Has it happened? Is it happening now, or will it happen in the future? Okay? So keep that in mind in terms of these aspects. A verb has to be in sync with tense. Let's look at some examples. The lines are still open, so please do call. It starts with an expression, hi, I dash you in a long time. How have you been? I was seen, I saw, I haven't seen, I hadn't seen. So think and answer. What is the correct answer for question number 1? Option C is the correct answer. Hi, I haven't seen you in a long time. How have you been? Number 2, yesterday I dashed to see my grandparents. Yesterday is a past tense, so I need to use an option which is past. Yesterday I have gone. Yesterday I gone. No. Yesterday I went to see my grandparents. Number 3, some people say that it is better to dash for today. Better to, this is a proverb, right? It's a saying. Better to is living, better to living, better to lives, better to live. It's better to live for today. Have you ever dashed to Canada? Now have you ever basically means It's a past tense. Have you ever been to Canada? Being is a state. Been means if there was an action involved there. Albert doesn't like dash on weekends. Albert doesn't like working. Albert doesn't like to work. Albert doesn't like work. Now, doesn't like work doesn't make sense. So, our answer 1 and 2 are correct. So, option D is perfect. He occasionally is a headache in the morning. He occasionally should be a headache in the morning. He occasionally might be, could be. Now, this is in terms of an adjective. So, all of the above are correct. So, we have various such questions. You can look up simple tests online as well. You will find tons of questions. The best way to learn is to test yourself and find what is the correct answer. We cannot learn grammar in terms of rules anymore. We already learned it, but we don't remember because we don't use it. So if you remember it in terms of usage, if you keep practicing, if you keep testing yourself, that will help you remember for a long time. So grammar is something which is extensive, but you need to put yourself in use. I cannot teach you in a classroom environment. Even when the lines are open, nobody is actually calling and asking questions. So I don't know what seems to be wrong there. So in the next session, that is on Monday, I'll move on to verbal ability, where we will look at certain instances, how to solve certain questions and certain situations. If you have questions, please post your questions on the YouTube channel. I'll take a look and provide you the answer. And thanks for tuning in. Make the best use of your day. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session. I hope you had a great festival back home. So we are talking about communication skills as a part of the ESC program, the Employability Skills Center program. Now this program is getting beamed across the state of Andhra Pradesh. You can either watch it on the satellite television, Mana TV, as well as the YouTube channel of Mana TV. You can watch it live on YouTube. And in case if you have missed, you can look it up in the playlist of Mana TV and you can watch the program and pose your questions. Now, this program, as a part of the initiative of AP State Skill Development Corporation, is meant to bridge the gap between what the students have in terms of the skills and competencies and what the industry is looking for. And one very essential and critical aspect of that is communication skills. So I had been speaking about communication, where I spoke about the 4 fundamental pillars of oral communication. I am on the first pillar, which is pronunciation. Today we'll talk about the last segment of pronunciation, and then we'll move on to grammar. As the first segment of pronunciation, we learnt the sounds. We learned how there are 24 consonant sounds and 15 vowel sounds, how they are different from vowels and consonants. We have 21 consonants and 5 vowels, but we have 24 consonant sound and 15 vowel sounds. Now, the importance of this vowel sound, I had been talking about in detail, the importance of consonant sound, vowel sound, everything in detail. The last session we did some practice around words, how to break it into syllables, how to break it into consonant and vowel sounds. And today we'll look it up in detail when it comes to syllable. And we'll also learn something new, which is syllable stress. So syllable is a beat of a sound, like I explained in the last segment, a unit of pronunciation carrying one vowel sound with or without surrounding consonants, forming the whole or part of word. So what I mean to say is, when it says pronunciation carrying one vowel sound, which means every vowel sound will constitute a particular syllable. So number of vowel sound is equivalent to number of syllable. Please do not confuse that with vowels itself. It's vowel sound. Let me show you an example and that will help you understand. Let me expand this a little bit so that you can see it clearly. Alright. Take for example, I have a word which is country. Okay. Alright. Now, how many consonants do I have? I am only talking about consonants and not consonant sounds. So, I have C, N, T, R, Y. So, C, N, T, R, Y, these are consonants. And vowels, I have O and U. Now, let's look at how many consonant sounds we have. So, we have K, N, T, R. Country. We have just 4 consonant sounds. And how many vowel sounds you have? We have K, then we have E, country. So, number of vowel sound will define number of syllable. So, how do I break it into syllable? If I have to break this word, country. Okay. Now, I may have a word where there are multiple or say more number of vowels but less number of vowel sounds. Let's quickly look at one such example. Okay, I have the word photography here. It's actually pronounced as photography. Now, how many consonants do I have here? I have P, H, T, G, R, A, P, H, Y. These are the consonants. What are the vowels? I have O, then I have O again, then I have A. So, O, O, A. Okay. Now, if I have to break it into syllables, I pronounce this as photography. How many syllables do I have? I have 4 syllables, but I have only 3 vowels. So, number of vowels doesn't signify number of syllable. Number of vowel sound signify number of syllable. So, let's see how many vowel sounds do we have. So, I need to break it into all the sounds. It starts with the first sound, pho. It's photo, g, r, a, f, e. Okay, it's photography. Photography. So, how many vowel sounds do I have? 1, 2, 3 and 4. So, photography. Please remember, this is where most of us make mistakes. Vowel sounds are equivalent to number of syllables. So, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Photography. When you master this entire art of understanding consonant sound vis-a-vis understanding vowel sounds, and when you combine that in terms of syllable, your pronunciation will be absolutely perfect. The reason people fail to understand when somebody else is speaking is because of 2 to 3 reasons. One is you do not have the right pronunciation. One word may sound like something else, and we make a mistake in terms of comprehension. Grammatically, you may not be saying the right thing, and again in terms of tense, in terms of verb, singular, plural, you make a mistake and it conveys a different meaning. You may not be using the right word in terms of vocabulary. When I talk about vocabulary, I'll give you a lot of examples where we end up using wrong words without understanding the context. And then we have fluency. Now, fluency will come when you have the right pronunciation, right grammar, and the right vocabulary. Okay, let's continue. So we looked at example. So pen has 1 syllable, pen. Then we have pencil, 2 syllables. Then we have computer, 3 syllables. And then we have technology. Now how do I pronounce this? Technology. It's technology. And there are 4 syllables here. Okay. The point that I was making in terms of the last session was there are certain words which has pretty much the same pronunciation. Some of the word may have the same spelling, but it needs to be pronounced differently, and that is what it denotes differently in terms of parts of speech and in terms of context. Let me give you example that will help you understand. We have a word which is project. I gave this example earlier as well. I can use this on a sentence, and it says please project the presentation on the screen. It's not in the screen, it's on the screen. I can either use this particular sentence. Let me change the color so that you can understand that this is an example. Or I can say, please now this particular word is common between both the sentences, right? This is what we are talking about. Now, when I'm using the first sentence, I'm supposed to pronounce this with a stress where I say project. This is the word, but I need to stress on the second syllable. There are 2 syllables, right? But I need to stress on the second syllable. When I do that, it means it's a verb. Now that's a rule of pronunciation. When I'm stressing on the second syllable, it's a verb. Okay? When I'm stressing on the first syllable, say for example, I'm stressing on this particular syllable, the first syllable, which is pro, that becomes a noun. This particular rule applies to every word which is spelt the same, but the shift of stress, I can either stress on the first syllable or the second syllable. So let me move this down so that we have the second example as the first one. So when I'm stressing on the first syllable, it becomes a noun. That means please submit the project. I say project. This is project. Here I say please project the presentation. Here I say please submit the project. So when I say project, that becomes a noun. When I say project, that becomes a verb. So when you're shifting it, and there is a change in terms of the vowel sound as well. When I say project, I'm using p, r and o, project. When I say project, I'm using p, r, o. So when I have project, it's an o sound. When I have project, I have an o sound. But the bigger aspect which you need to understand is the stress on which syllable. Like project and project, there are other examples. For example, subject. Okay, I'm going to move this down so that I can use the noun as the first example. So let me use the example. Biology is an interesting subject. I'm stressing on the first syllable. So I say biology is an interesting subject. I'm stressing on the first syllable. Okay. Now, I'm using another example. Please don't subject the students to any tests. So here my stress has moved to the second syllable. For example, when I say the exam is scheduled at 4 o'clock, the timings is subject to change depending on the circumstances. So that becomes a verb. Okay. Likewise, there are tons of such words where the shift in the sound will lead to change in the meaning. It could mean a noun, it could mean a verb. All right. Now, one word where a lot of us make mistake, where we do not have complete clarity, is this particular word. Okay. Now, let me get rid of this example here. Let me explain what are the two different types of pronunciation. I can pronounce this as first of all, there are two syllables, right? All right. Now, I can either pronounce this as k or n, then tent. I can either pronounce this as content or I can pronounce this as content. So, content, content. We don't really understand what to be used where. That is where we make a mistake. Now, when we pronounce this as content, the meaning it means an ingredient or index. For example, please give me the content for the training. Okay. Now, when I say content, let me change the color here. Now, when I say content, this means being happy. For example, are you content with the training? Okay. Now, that makes a big difference, right? So, we have the word content. I break it into two syllables. When I pronounce this as content, it means ingredient or index. When I pronounce this as that means happiness or being self-satisfied. So these are the aspects that you need to clearly remember when you pronounce the words. Okay. Now this is what syllable stress is all about. In linguistics, stress is the relative emphasis that may be given to certain syllables in a word. So whenever you are stressing on a particular syllable, that means it's syllable stress. Now there are certain rules to syllable stress. What are they? There's something called penultimate, and there is something called anti-penultimate. So I'll talk about anti-penultimate later. What I want you to do is draw this diagram on your notebook to make a note of it. Penultimate means last but one or second last, right? So this is the word ending. What do we mean by word ending? So these are the word endings. There are a lot of English words that will end with any of these. Now when the rule says when a word ends with these as ending, the stress should be on the second last or the last but one syllable. Let me show you an example that will help you understand what do I mean by this. Okay, we are learning about, let me bring this down. Which rule we are looking at? We are looking at penultimate rule. When you have any word that's ending with IC, IOUS, EOUS, SION, TION, the stress should be on the second last syllable. So let's take a quick look at it. Okay. If I have a word which is panic, I will quickly change the format so that you can understand this better. Panic, tragic, magic, any more words that ends with IC? Picnic. Okay. The rule says in case if you have any word that's ending with IC, the stress should be on the last but one syllable. So let's break this. Panic is panic, which means I will stress on